Okay, we're gonna do our best to stick to our schedule today. So welcome back from the break. Our next session is with Jacques Neukom. So Jacques is in Willow Creek, California, and we've had the pleasure of having him up for the Small Farms Conference a couple of times. Today, he's going to be focusing on his methods for dry farming carrots. But the sessions that he's been up to share about in the past, you'll see on the bottom left, there's a picture of him in his dry farm peach orchard. So Matt will share in the chat box a link to a recording of his Small Farms presentation, along with Andrew Schwartz and Dan Schuler on dry farmed orchard systems. I've had the pleasure of visiting. Actually, I mentioned in the welcoming that I got to do case studies of dry farmers back in 2015, and Jacques was one of those case studies. So I visited Jacques and several other farmers before I ever tried to do anything on the ground, and was really inspired by this experience, especially the experience of eating these dry farm peaches. Now, I have not gotten to try Jacques' dry farm carrots, but maybe someday. So Jacques, we're gonna play the recording, and then we'll unmute you after the recording is finished, and then do a live Q&A. Just a reminder, just for the remainder of this morning, since we have so many participants, we're going to be directing questions to Matt this time. Tegan is not with us anymore, so she had to go to another meeting. So Matt is gonna be our question wrangler. So he'll be receiving all those and then verbalizing them for Jacques at the end of this presentation. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, Matt, and then you can pull up Jacques' presentation.
Hi, my name is Jacques Neukom with Neukom Family Farms in Humboldt County, California, and I dry farm carrots. Most people know us in Humboldt County because of our peaches. We grow a lot of tree fruit. And one of the reasons is because I have a really limited water supply. And I always knew that perennials would be my future. But 27 years ago, as a 21-year-old farmer, how was I supposed to get from nothing to my future? So poverty and desperation leads you to invention. And so I figured out how to grow a lot of things with minimal water or without any water. So this picture here is our peach orchard. And as you can see, we use a dust mulch under the trees, and it does a beautiful job of incredible fruit. This is the line for our peaches and our other produce an hour before the farmer's market in Arcata. And this is what it's all about. It's just making your customer happy and keeping them coming back. So this is part of our farm. This is actually the tomato patches. It's 2 different acres of tomatoes. Just to give you an idea of the terrain and what our climate's like. It's we have a very wet winter, but then come April, that's pretty much the end of it, and we get up to 100, 115 sometimes, long stretches. Obviously, growing peaches and melons and corn, hot weather crops. I love this picture because this is my aluminum ag pipe that I got to recycle. So I never have to move ag pipe again. And that is freedom. It's also a huge labor saving cost. So I'm saving on water, I'm saving on labor, and I'm producing a superior product. This is our dry farmed corn, and you can see, like, by the size of the corn, we're not losing anything with productivity. We have incredible flavor. It's amazing what you can do with dry farming. Here, this is my daughter. She's got the melon field behind her, and you can see there, if you look closely, you might see a few weeds. But really, like, that's another whole thing about dry farming is, like, very few weeds to contend with, and again, a superior product. This also shows you, this is a Swan Lake melon, one of my favorites. I don't know if you could grow this without dry farming. They split so easily. And also you can see with like the quantity that's being produced there, like you're not losing in quantity. Getting into carrots, this is us preparing a carrot field. It all starts with the cover crop, getting it in with good moisture in the springtime. So I'm trying to, I might not actually plant carrots until June, July, but I'm getting my cover crop in and my moisture preserved in April, usually. So once I have incorporated the cover crop, I will just let it sit there, fluffy soil, just composting the cover crop in the ground. I won't touch it again, because basically every time you touch it, you're losing, a lot to evaporation. So with that, I'll just let it sit. The next thing I do is I usually like to do a 3-row bed, and the bed is the width of the tractor, the tires being the walkways. So I will put a toolbar on the tractor that has 3 ripping tines, and I will go down 18 inches. There's a couple reasons for that. Part of it, it helps bring moisture to the surface. So I will, if it's a dry year, I will go back and forth maybe a few times to help bring that moisture to the surface. In a dry year, it might only take 1 time. I'll do it because without saturating your soil with water, that carrot root, that little carrot root, is going to need some time and some help going down through the soil. So by ripping that channel, you're telling yourself, this is exactly where I'm going to plant, and you're helping that carrot out. So another thing we do is, you can see that the Alice Chalmers G with a basket weeder on it. That is when you're ripping, a lot of the times you'll bring up some larger clods. It's just a way to make the soil a little more crumbly, get rid of any small weeds. It also helps, once again, define that right over the of course, the basket weeder is set exactly to where the rippers are. So you'll know exactly where to plant your seed. I don't have a tractor mounted seeder. I'm pushing an earthway still, but man, it just keeps working. So 27 years with my little piece of plastic. This is typically after we've ripped and then basket weeded. You can see there's still a lot of organic matter. I don't use a rototiller. Just long ago, it was pounded into me that that's bad for the soil. And also, with something like a tiny carrot seed and how long it takes for a carrot seed to germinate. Yeah, if you can, if I can do it with a cloddy soil, if you can get carrots to germinate and grow in a cloddy soil, you can do it anywhere, probably. This is, of course, weeks later, but this just shows you that, that's probably a 24-inch carrot, and we're not even done yet. This is throughout the season. The soil is so loose that if it doesn't rain, which it usually doesn't, I don't need a digging fork. I don't need to undercut them. I can pull them out by hand. So once again, it's incredibly efficient, easy. I usually go through my carrot patch once and weed and thin if I planted them too thickly. But that's once. It's how to make carrots profitable. This is the only way I ever found out how. If I ever watered them, the weeding, how long they take to grow, flame weeding, washing, just carrots are a hard thing, maybe in my climate or maybe just for me, but carrots are a hard thing to make a profit on. So this is how I kept my labor to a minimum. And it's kind of like my melon crop. I plant them. The next time I go in there, I'm harvesting them. It's pretty nice. That's the end of my slideshow. And it does give you, all these pictures give you a little hint on the farm. With the carrots, another thing I like to think about is like with anything dry farmed, variety selection. We have a lot of, you can see in this picture even, we have a lot of Queen Anne's lace around the farm. So I've never thought of breeding or keeping a selection myself, but with melons, with tomatoes, other crops that I dry farm, I do save my own seed. For variety selection, I found that European carrot varieties tend to focus more on the sweet. I also obviously went for varieties that had a good taproot. An American carrot that's got a very carroty flavor, if it's dry farmed, I found it could have a tinge of bitterness to it. And that I didn't want to put my name to it. I didn't sell it. Good for horses. But I eventually found a variety called Sugar Snacks. And that's what you see pictured here. And that's pretty much like, I'm not looking any further because I have to buy my carrot seed. I go with Sugar Snacks, and it's wonderful. So I can do successive plantings for a longer season, but also another reason why it's, if I plant carrots too early, I have too many weeds. And then they don't become profitable. Because I don't do the farmer's market all year long with carrots, I have to have something exceptional, because something like a carrot, like when you're at a farmer's market and you find a person with good carrots, you're going to stick with them. So why would anybody ever try you if you're only going to have carrots for a week or 2 or 3 or 4? So that's like when somebody walks by my booth and they see bunched carrots for $2 that are 18 to 24 inches long, and you hand out a sample of how crisp and how good they are, you'll sell out all your carrots. So the big thing for us has been, I'm not going to be the carrot king, but when I do have a diversity on my table, it plays in my favor. Having something new, attracting new customers, it works out. It works out very well. I have my rotation for the carrots is actually corn. I do corn before. I don't do any supplemental fertility other than the cover crop. There is, when I'm planting in July, it usually means that I don't get a second crop on that land. But if you're in a dry farm situation and you're waiting for the rain anyway, then it's, you are usually farming like one crop per season. So it's not a loss in that way. It's nice for me being with perennials and mainly fruit, sweet things. I do appreciate the having something substantial like a carrot on my table. Also, like once you taste them, they definitely go in the sweet category, right? So it kind of gives everybody that image that everything we grow is sweet, if we can even pull that off. Dry farming, a lot of times, like with something like a carrot, it's not a, like a melon, a peach, a tomato. People really think, ooh, that's going to be sweet. Oh my gosh, but with a carrot, people are suspicious. So my carrots is something I've never marketed as dry farmed. I let the visual of the and I also bring them in an overwhelming amount, just a huge display. If people are going to walk around the farmer's market and see my carrots, they're going to be like, oh, that's obviously the carrot guy. So like making sure people notice them. It's not just a little thing over the side. We'll put them front and center because people are always going to find the peaches, right? I think that's what I have.
That's great. We can go ahead and go to the question and answer, Jacques. Thank you so much. So we have some questions coming in for you. I have a couple of screens open here and two different profiles, so I'm getting questions on both. Let's see. So first of all, my first question for you is, can you speak to the flavor of dry farm crops versus irrigated crops?
Yeah, that's really easy. I mean, dry farmed, I mean, with my fruit crops, and that's including like tomatoes and melons, um, the you can't compare. The sugar is so much higher. Um, the the looking on a bricks meter, whatnot, like if you can just get people to try it, it's always, the sugar is always higher, the flavor is pronounced. um with the carrots, like I said, like depending on the variety, I have found some to have more of a bitter, intense carrot flavor. And so that's why I tried to find one that really focused on, crisp and sweet, and that sugar snacks fit that profile. I did have one year where we had a prolonged, I think we didn't have a rain until December, and I did start to taste that, intense carrot flavor with the sugar snack. And so I stopped harvesting until it rained, and then as soon as it rained, they were perfect again. It's also a nice one. We always save a couple 150-foot rows, like for the for the family, and that might be like, when you have good carrots, like it's amazing what you can go through in a winter. So I would leave 12 150-foot rows, and by gosh, me and my family and a few friends we can get through that many in a winter. So that variety, it's not, I don't think it's marketed as a winter storage variety, but I would leave them in the ground, harvesting them as needed, and they turned out great.
So this actually gets to our next question. Where do you get the seeds for sugar snacks?
I think it's a Johnny's variety. Yeah, it's my wife does most of the seed inventory and stuff, but I always like showing off our seed area, because it's just mason jars. There are so few seed we have to buy. And a lot of that actually is because of dry farming. I try and specifically, with melons and tomatoes, I try and specifically stay away from hybrids. Some things like the watermelon I currently grow, like that was a hybrid. And, after 15 years of just growing it, I've actually selected for a smaller melon that dry farms beautifully. So, yeah, but I think that one we get through Johnny's.
Great. Next question is, what is your soil series? And do you have a high water table?
I do not have a high water table. We have like it's a clay loam and it's deep. And I think one of the things, it's not a heavy clay loam, and but the depth of it, I think, is important. I think that's really adds to that water holding potential. And the if From where we are, the river is about a quarter mile away, and then there's 120-foot cliff and bedrock. And so I like to think we're well above the water table. It is, I see a lot of other people dry farming in my area, but they're basically dry farming like, former marshland, or, they're at like 1 foot above river elevation. And I think that might be, yeah, definitely dry farm in those kind of situations. But I think I look at our farm and think, like this really proves a point. I think with the amount of dry farming we do and the success we've had, I think if you improve your soil, work with that cover crop, and don't be tractoring in the winter, or take those soils courses through the community college and Elaine Ingham's classes, and really understand what you're dealing with. And I'd say if you have, we were at OSU, and Bill Reynolds and I spoke there. A lot of people were saying 4 feet of topsoil. Like if you've got that, you probably have enough water holding capacity, depending on your soil type. But we were even, we rented a field a number of years ago that was a shaly hillside. And I dry farmed melons there on the first year. So a lot of it is, cultural. How do you tend the soil? How do you preserve that moisture? But that was really surprising. It was a bonus. I wasn't, staking my entire income on that shaly hillside, but it had a modest slope to it, and it did really well.
Great, thank you. So another question we had is, could I ask you how you assure even germination? Is there any sort of strategy you have for ensuring germination of your carrot seeds?
Yeah, that a lot of that is the depth at which you plant it, which, bringing up that moisture, I guess one thing I didn't say is, I will look at the moon, and I will go out early in the morning, because your soil moisture saturation level will actually rise overnight. So what gets dried out on the surface will rehydrate. And so going back and forth and with the rippers, and then kind of settling everything back down with the basket weeder, or even going over it with a rake, defining, and then boom, hitting it with the seeder. Like, you're bringing that moisture up, you're making sure there's moist soil in contact with the seed. And then only, I'm with something like carrot seed, you're not planting it very deep. So you really need that. And then working with the moon, I have noticed over the years that I get better germination with my crops closer to a full moon. I did try, when I was first starting, I tried to go by a biodynamic calendar, and that kind of was, I'd be like, oh, can't, I might intuitively think, oh, perfect time to plant carrots. And then I'd look at the calendar, I'd be like, nope, not till next week. And then I would, and then it would be raining. So, things like that. So I really found, like, in my situation, I found that the moon can, if I can do that, I do try and look at the moon for my planting dates.
We were getting a lot of questions about what sort of cover crop seeds you use.
Yeah, I find it with my soil, I wait for the fall rains, and then I get in it as quick as possible. And we have, if we get an early rain, I go with oats. If we get a late rain, I usually go with rye. And I think I go with rye because it does germinate well in cold soils. And then also the seed is smaller. So you're getting a lot more plants. If you're getting a late start on your cover crop, you're getting a lot more plants per square foot, so to hold down that soil and cover it as quick as possible. So yeah, I go with, that's usually for my grain. And then I do Austrian pea, and a purple hairy vetch. And, pretty much my soil is uniform, depending on, I farm in 3 different locations, but the soil is all extremely uniform. And that's what I found works, at my latitude, with my soil type. But yeah, I usually keep it at that. Another thing I have tried to do is I've established it in one field, and it's working really well. I have miner's lettuce and then a Dijon mustard, and I like both of those because they can reseed themselves. So now what I'm doing is I'm trying to collect seed and spread them to my other fields and locations to keep that going. But that works wonderfully. It also, there are 2 things that can establish and cover the ground. The mustard seed with that taproot can break any sort of plow layer, things like that. And also just, diversity is always your friend, right? So the more things you can get into your cover crop, the better.
We're getting some non-carrot related questions. One viewer would like to know what kind of tomatoes you grow.
Yeah. Well, we grow, we used to grow, 9 different types of cherry tomatoes, but we figured out that there was a price point for a basket of tomatoes that people didn't want to go over. So in our area, charging any more than $3.50 a basket or $5 for 2, we couldn't go over that. And so we hit this level where we want to pay our workers as much as possible. So we start at 15 and we go to 18. Or so far, you know, we have some employees that are at $18 an hour. And there was, we started realizing that when you're talking about all that trellising, all that maintenance, plus the picking costs, cherry tomatoes were not in the ballpark for us anymore. So what we do now is we have 1 acre of trellised tomatoes that are all heirlooms, and they're all open pollinated. And we have just gone through and, you know, whether it's you know, a vintage wine or a Cherokee purple or a Paul Robeson, you know, just we have got every color imaginable. And, you know, one of the neat things about heirlooms right now is that there are actually new breeding being done with old heirlooms. So a lot of fun stuff coming out. And then with those heirlooms, you can save your own seed. And we actually have had a couple of off types, which we have stabilized and now have in our, you know, we grow them in our rotation. And so we do about like 15 different heirlooms, 150-foot rows. If they're popular, we'll do two rows of a certain variety. Usually we just do one. And then on the other acre, we do a red, you know, slicing tomato. And I, before I really knew anything about breeding, I did it. And what I did was I, in my backyard, I took, what was it? It was, everybody loves to farm early girls. And, but early girls are owned by Monsanto or now Bayer. And so, I wanted to find something else. I wanted something with flavor. I also wanted something I could harvest, and also when you're talking about it like a standard slicing tomato, or maybe even like a Roma, or, you know, people want them bulk, you know, and cheap. So how can you? So that's why they invented like a determinant variety. So I worked with a bunch of different. I kind of got a gene pool of determinant. You know, beefsteak or, you know, standard slicing tomatoes, and did a lot of hand pollinating and not knowing anything about what transfers with what genes, and, you know, really a novice approach, but it was really interesting. I started off with all red slicing tomatoes, and that next year I had orange and I had yellow and I had small and I had large. And but what I did was thankfully with the farmers market, I sold them all, you know, because you just put them in their respective box and you're off to market. But as far as seed was concerned, I started to select. And so now I have my own red slicing tomato, and we call it the Trinity tomato, and because we're on the Trinity River. And it in most years it does very well with the dry farming situation, you know, on my soil. And it's a bush, you know, a bush determinant type. I do successive waves, and you can put down a 20-pound box and fill it without moving a 20-pound, you know, without moving the box, you can fill it, and it's beautiful. So that's what I grow right now as far as tomatoes are concerned.
Great. Yeah. Well, we're about to hit that lunchtime. Some of our viewers want to keep you going. I'll leave that up to you. But thank you so much for coming and talking to us today and putting together the video with Amy.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing thoughts or?
No, just I think it's a, you know, I don't get it right every time, but I make sure I learn from my mistakes. And you know, it's part of the reason why we have a successful farm. And it's a big part of why we have a successful farm is dry farming. And I watch, you know, every time I see a neighboring farm with rainbirds, you know, soak in the place, and I see that 6-inch pipe in the river, and I just go like, they're ecologically, that's, you know, that's rough. And then I also think like, you know, every time you water, you get those microbes going in your soil, and they eat your organic matter. So by going a season and dry farming a crop, you're keeping your organic matter, your percentage in your soil higher, and that's got to just build on itself. So I think you're doing your farm right, you're doing the ecology of your region right, and then you know, making that plant work harder it's almost like you're turning it into an athlete, right? You're making that root system do its job, and it's gotta be good nutritionally for, you know, the consumer. And I just think it's a win-win-win. So, you know, keep trying, and you know, maybe it's variety, maybe it's seasonality, you know, but like you can pull it off. There's a lot of things out there. I'm still, every year I learn something. So why not start now? You know, it's a great, this season, it would be a great, you know, dry farming in a backyard situation is hard. You know, dry farming like an acre or more, it gets easier. You know, it's just like, I could never grow an onion with, I don't care what kind of fertilizer, I don't care how much water, I could never grow a 2-pound onion in my garden, but I can grow tons of 2-pound onions on my farm, you know? And I think a lot of that is that edge effect. So the closer you get to the edge of your farm, your productivity goes down. And that's where that garden is almost all edge. So, so go big, but, you know, in a human scale. You know, my biggest field is, or my biggest row cropping area is 150 feet. You know, I've worked on farms that are 500-foot rows, and that's like, that'll kill you. You can't hoe a row by lunch. You know, that's rough when you're looking at 400 more rows. So keep it human scale. But yeah, thank you for putting this on, Amy. This is a great way to share skills and knowledge. So thank you.
Of course, thank you. And we recorded this, so yeah, this will be available for other people. And just so you know, Jacques, there was about 190 people that registered today. So there's a growing interest in dry farming for sure. So yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge with us. And yeah, so we did share in the chat box the session from the Dry Farm Orchard Systems that you did with Andrew and Dan. We'll all also share a link to the session that Jacques participated in a few years ago with Bill Reynolds and Steve Peters. So Jacques does not like kind of do social media and like all that kind of thing. So he is generous enough to come here and join us for some of these events, but I'll share those with everybody so that you have those as well. But
Great.
It looks like it's a beautiful day there, Jacques. So I bet you have a few things on your list of to do.
The fields are calling. So
yeah, they're calling.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll be in touch with you. Take care.
You well.
Bye.